Welcome everybody to the third of our artist talks as part of the Immersive Sonic Journeys project here at the Melbourne Recital Centre. My name's Lawrence Harvey and I would like to introduce Jasmin Leung to today's talk. Just before we start, I'd like to acknowledge that today we are meeting on the lands of the Woonwurrung and Boonwurrung language groups of the Eastern Kulin Nations, and I pay my respects to their elders past and present, and also note that this is unceded land and it always is, always was and always will be Aboriginal land. So just a little bit about the project. It's been a collaboration between Melbourne Recital Centre, Style Sound Studios and the Design and Sonic Process research group at RMIT. And it came about through an idea from the centre that what they wanted to do was to look at a way of being able to have some kind of event or use of the public spaces when there wasn't a concert on, so during the day, and then possibly even before and after. And so during a conversation through one of the walkthroughs that we did with centre staff, we started to notice the extraordinary acoustic, not just of the hall, but also of the circulation system or the circulation spaces around the centre. So of course it's isolated from the surrounding soundscape, but also has a very low noise floor itself, because you don't want to be introducing sound into a building that may travel through to the concert hall. So it means that there is some really great listening conditions as you walk around the building. We then undertook some work with master students at RMIT, and then we had a workshop with the artists in February of this year in the studio around spatial sound and composing spatially, and then some workshops back down here with some with a simple speaker system so that artists could hear what some of their existing works might sound like in the spaces. From there, then we had then the 4 commissions, and then we've also adapted some other works from our collection and previous projects. So, on that note, Jasmin,
hi.
As a short intro, welcome. I'd just be curious to know, so as I said, we came and visited the building and did the walkthrough, and I was just wondering how you approached the brief, particularly where you've got an audience that is going to move through your composition, not sit statically. So just curious about, you'd say, your initial response to the brief in the building.
Oh, well, I was really struck by how the spaces we were looking at, if we're talking about audiences that aren't static, were all stairways, which I think, if you think about how you behave in a space, stairways give you a lot of information about how to move and where to stop and where to definitely not stop. And so I was quite interested then to think about perception. So perhaps using music material that was not changing so much, but the way that you moved through a passage or through the stairwell created change in how you experienced the sound.
Okay, thank you. And then have you worked in installation before in that particular way, or was this one of the first times?
Only properly once before, I think. Yeah. And that was that was part of an Asia Link residency in China, where I did an installation in a gallery space in Chongqing, where it was also multi-channel, but it was a very DIY. It was all like teeny tiny cheap bulk made little radios that were all playing the same track at slightly different times. Yeah.
It's interesting because there's always more than one way to deliver a work, isn't there? So that one. So how did you notice and say the difference in doing that project to say this one?
Oh, well, it was amazing having such excellent tech support, because you could really control everything in such a beautifully precise way that was super satisfying. And I think the other difference was that there was a dimension, like the dimension of 3 floors to work with. It got me thinking a lot more about, what is this building, rather than, what's my composition in relation to this building, if that makes sense. It was actually about the building.
Yes. Because your piece works with the resonant frequencies of the blue stairwell, which was a real revelation for many of us, because although many of us had worked here and been to concerts here, it's not a space that you go to unless you're accessing, I think, door number 4 into the main concert hall. So I know when we came through, it was extraordinary. This very tall cavernous space that's only effectively 3 or 4 steps off Sturt Street, and then suddenly you're into this other strange world to do that. So can you remember back the first time we did the walkthrough for you? What that impression was like?
Sure. Well, it was my first time walking through that staircase, and I've been to the Recital Centre a bunch of times and have never had to access that stairwell. And I think it's quite striking with just how blue it is and how resonant it is. And it feels like quite an intimate space, like there's no windows. The light is very dim, and even your footsteps become quite amplified, and it's like this, even just walking in there in silence is quite fun.
With some of the other talks, I asked the artists how they approach the sounds they were going to use in the piece, but your piece doesn't really start from sounds that are created to go in there. Could you talk a bit about that process you went through of taking the impulse responses and finding the resonant frequency of the room?
Sure. Well, I was so struck by the reverberations of this blue stairwell. I thought, and I've often in my work I've been quite interested in the idea of echo. So with the assistance of Sile, we took impulse responses. So that included things like running a sine sweep, so the full frequency spectrum sweep, and recording that. And then we also popped some balloons to get like a big echoey sound. And we also played different kinds of noise, so white noise, through the space. And then I took those recordings home and analysed that through a program called Spear, and found which frequencies were blooming the most in that space. A little bit like, when you're singing in the shower and some frequencies just seem to like really pop. It was that same process of just finding what those frequencies were, and then creating the piece based off what I found in the impulse responses.
And is that something that you're often aware of? Is that a way of explaining your relationship to sound and space?
Yeah, I think so. It's one of because I'm quite interested in, I have a string player background, so I'm always interested in intonation. And I think using a site-specific harmony, or the way the sounds move in particular spaces, is a great way of opening up different tuning systems, or creating your own tuning systems that are really bespoke to different spaces. So, yeah, was that an answer to what was the question? Sorry.
Yeah, I just about that. Do you find I won't say hypersensitive, but I suppose more maybe hyper aware that when you go into a space, are you looking to discover those frequencies? I know through your own voice, but yes, you can do it technically, of course. But
I guess, and I guess yes. I mean, not every space, but I'm quite struck by different places. And I think maybe where this started was like in my late teens, early 20s, there's a really great stormwater drain in Brisbane where a lot of experimental music gigs would happen. And I'd be like, why does it always sound so good in here? And that's how I got into like, okay, I need to measure what's going on in this big concrete drain. And that's how I started this process of calculating echoes in places and using that to create like a harmonic language.
It's interesting I spent a lot of time around visual people and designers predominantly, and of course they will talk a lot about those textual qualities of space and how that might transfer between two spaces or connect two spaces as well. Have you ever had a similar connection where you think, seems to have a very similar resonant frequency to that other, the stormwater drain or something like that?
Yeah, no, I haven't heard the stormwater drain anywhere else. No, not really. Everything's quite unique. Maybe showers are the most similar, because also you hear the white noise of all the water falling, and they all sound quite similar.
Yeah, and that's one thing. I think, as I mentioned, that the building has a very low noise floor, meaning you don't really hear the air conditioning in here. I mean, it's on obviously, but you don't really hear it in the same way you hear it in other buildings as well. So I could imagine, particularly in your case, that might limit what you can do, because it's not yes, while the shower has that white noise, it's predominantly mid to high frequency splashing and noise, isn't it? It's not that low, I sometimes call it the sludge, that sense of you just kind of wading through this acoustic molasses of things. So hopefully that was more attractive to you for this project.
Oh, definitely. And I think even like having such different spaces within the same building, like the blue stairwell is so resonant and echoey, but this north-facing stairwell is, or foyer spaces. Yes, sound is just allowed to go out and it doesn't really reflect back in the intimate way it does in the stairwell.
Well, actually, one thing I did notice with it was that, and I was listening to your piece the other day, and I think it was Jane said, "Oh, put your hand on the wall and then put your head on the wall." And I did, and you can actually feel the vibration because you're getting the resonant frequencies. You're obviously resonating parts of the structure, and so you've got that added experience of, again, just placing your hand lightly on the wall.
Yes.
You can hear it vibrating, and I was reminded, I've just finished Jock Sarong's book, Cherrywood, where the whole idea is the pub is alive, and it had a similar sense of being in your space that, or in your piece, your space, that it did feel alive. Like that one in the same way that it didn't otherwise. I don't know.
Oh, definitely. No, because but because that's it. Because it's such, but it's only a few meters in, like from wall to wall. So we call that an axial mode in like acoustics. And yeah, it's literally the sound that's the most resonant is the frequency that. I mean, you could probably calculate just by measuring how many centimetres is it from one wall of the stairwell to the others times by the speed of sound. And because that is the one that's blooming the most, you can actually feel it shaking. And there is one balustrade that's quite hollow and you can lean against it and the sound goes through your belly, which is also quite nice, I think.
And with this interest in acoustics and space in that way, have you used other types of parameter or measurement in that way in pieces?
I guess I use I'm aware of like the acoustics and things are actually used for the opposite reason. Like I'm sure all the concert halls here are perfectly acoustically treated to get rid of all those axial modes and room nodes and whatever. Yeah, I have used it in other things. Sometimes I like to use it in like a speculative way. So I did a project recently where I had some dimensions of a Cantonese opera tent from the late 1800s. And while there's no way to know what the music sounded like in there, I thought it was interesting to try and figure out what the echo of the sound of that could be, and then like replaying that as like just an interesting way to find unusual harmonies, because I'm quite interested in harmony, but I don't want to use like our standard 12-tone system because that to me is not so there's a lot of limitations in that. So using like certain sites as a conceptual framework and then what their reflections and echoes are to create a structure for what my harmonic content is. It's quite. So that's my process.
It really is site-specific work. So the dimension of the composition arrives from the dimensions of the space.
Yes.
In that way.
Yes.
So in that case, do you have a concept of the listener in that one? That's obviously, we're not talking about someone sitting in a concert hall. When you're thinking then about performance, what's going through your mind then?
Oh, yes, definitely thinking about the listener, because I think you'll hear that the piece in itself, compositionally, is quite straightforward and simple. It's just ascending through the most resonant nodes in like this, like I think it's in like a 6-part canon. It's not complicated, and because of that, you can really tune in to what's going on with your ears, and it's, I guess, this idea of becoming hyper aware of these different sensations happening in your eardrums. Whereas if I had a lot going on harmonically, you wouldn't actually get to feel that vibration. I'm just playing them in super long tones at a rate that I think is easy to perceive the like acoustic phenomena in the stairwell, rather than just swishing through it all. Yeah.
So you came and did the suites, and then could you just talk through the process after that, doing analysis and then the recordings?
Sure. So it's quite a straight. It's like I guess like spectral analysis can can be complicated, but I use quite like a straightforward method. So I use a program called Sphere, I think I mentioned, which is great because it really isolates what frequencies are the most resonant. And then from there I chose a few of the ones that were the most resonant. They were outside of our singing range, and I know I wanted a human voice to be creating these sounds. So I then used like just, I guess we call it like all the upper partials. So I just used like the harmonic series to then bring it back into a singable range. And then I also found what the relationship of these sounds were to each other, and using things like sum and difference tones, like I guess things that not like psychoacoustic things that happen in our ear, but I've calculated what that would sound like and then played them back into the space. And then from there I created like just a spreadsheet, like a little matrix of all possible frequencies that were blooming in the space, and then reduced them into a singable range, put them into like a scale, got a singer to like have a sine tone going into her ear so she could sing perfectly in tune, which is quite amazing because it's really not possible to sing perfectly in tune. So you get this beautiful beating as she's like trying to find to the like exact frequency, like to the 100th of a semitone where that sound is. And then from all those recordings I put together this like staircase, this staircase canon of humming.
which again I really enjoyed because the in the blue stairwell, from my recollection, is there's 7 stopping points, or I've called, for the purpose of the project, I call them the vistas, where you feel you can sort of stop and take in the piece. And what I liked about yours is that you felt you were both ascending space and ascending the composition.
Yes.
Simultaneously. So there was a real match, or a real symbiosis between the two.
Oh, great. Yeah, I think over the 20 minutes, we slowly we slowly go up. Yeah.
And so could you imagine that process for you now being repeated in another space, or you would have to rethink the whole process?
Oh, could definitely do the same process in another space. Yeah.
So we could look forward to a series of pieces in
Sure, but we have to go and do
in concert hall foyers around the world.
Yes, but sign sweeps of all of them first. Yeah.
And I'm just curious then about the relationship then, say, between your instrumental work and other things. You had and you've been very busy. You've just had a project with speed percussion prior to this one. That relationship, could you just talk about that relationship between your, say, instrumental composition and the installation practice you could might emerge?
Sure. I guess I see them kind of as the same practice, which is just this interest in tuning and sound and perception. Maybe that my instrumental practice, I spend a long time playing the erhu, which is a Chinese spike fiddle, and it famously, the strings don't touch the fingerboard, so intonation becomes, it's basically what's the most interesting thing about the instrument is intonation. And I guess that has a lot of carryover to this idea of tuning into the frequencies of different spaces.
And do you think that's where your interest in that fine resolution, and I suppose it is a hypersensitivity to frequency and those pitch differences, do you think that's come from that?
Probably. I mean, like if you've ever heard like a string quartet try to like, or a string orchestra tuning the instruments, just all these parallel fifths and hearing all the beating going on, I think that's the best part of.
I'm sure having that sound source so close to you in that way. I remember as a student, because I grew up playing piano and very, very traditional musical education, and the first time I got to the studio in Canberra, and a couple of weeks in, it must have been a VCS3, and hearing the harmonic series for the first time and being able to tune in and out, and then going to a piano concert that night and thinking, oh no, what have they done to the piano? It sounds terrible.
Why is it all out of tune?
It's all out of tune, and listen to it clanging around like there's something wrong with it. And of course it wasn't. It was just I had happened to have spent the afternoon in this other sonic world.
Oh yeah.
How do you make the shift if you're going backwards and forwards, or these days you find you?
I mean, I guess like equal divisions of the octave are useful in a lot of ways. There's a reason why we still use it, but I think because I spent a lot of time playing like non-Western music and working with like spectral music and just being interested in intonation in general. You just kind of it's all just like a sound palette that you can move between, and but I really don't like to be limited by just 12 tones.
One of the other things I noticed with your piece in the translation between the two spaces, so we have the blue stairwell and we call it the front stairwell or the grand stairwell at the front of the building. So of course your piece was specifically made for the blue stairwell. That's where you took the resonant frequencies and did all the calculations. What was it like for you at hearing the piece in a bigger space where it wasn't, the mapping of the piece didn't arise from the architecture?
Yeah, quite interesting because it really reveals. It's quite the piece was the piece lives in the blue stairwell, and I almost think of how it functions in the white stairwell as this either like warped mirror where the half the world is kind of missing, and it kind of reveals the bones of the sound, and it might make you more able to hear like the green of Tina's voice, or like because the sound can travel so much in a way that's a lot more uninterrupted in this larger foyer space. I think in a way you're paying more attention to just the bones of the piece, and I actually think it works kind of like you need like a shade of dark to make things look really light. That by the time you walk into the blue stairwell, you realize, oh, it's the same piece and how different it is. That's when you really get an understanding of how you perceive sound in different spaces, or like, oh, this is what this space sounds like. Whereas I think if I didn't have anything going in the white in this big glass foyer space, you would just access the blue stairwell and you might think, oh, she's just cranked the reverb on this on this composition, but it's no, it's actually the space doing all these things and creating these weird shapes and shadows, and like you can feel beating in your ears that you don't get at all in this space.
Yeah. I found that too, much more physical, or much more a sense of, I'm not just hearing the piece, I'm actually feeling the piece as well. It's quite a bodily sensation. Then of course even more enhanced once you put your hand on the wall or just lean your ear against the wall as well. Whereas I found in the big stairwell, the stairwell at the front, it tended to sort of float more. It was much more atmospheric.
Yes.
And ethereal, but not as physical.
No,
way.
It's not buzzing right in your jaw or
no,
anything.
That's right.
Yeah.
One of the extensions to the project that we have that we discussed early on, but pulled it back just so we could get through this first stage, was that we would look at commissions or pieces where we have the format we do for this one, so multi-channel sound system installed around the venue, but then there being a performed component. Could you imagine, I'm not going to hold you to this by any means, but I'm just curious, does that strike something for your imagination? Could you imagine a scenario where there's a performed component backing onto an installation experience?
Oh, do you mean like there's a performance happening and then if you're just thinking in terms of like audience experience?
Well, they're interrelated. Maybe it's one work. And so that's in two modes. So there's a mode you sit and listen to, there's a mode you walk into.
Oh, okay, but it's the same piece? Sorry, I should understand.
And the way I was thinking about it, it's a similar sound world, but viewed in two different ways or experienced in two different ways.
Yeah, definitely. And I think this, I'm quite new to the idea of diffusion, and I think like a live version of that in a more like traditional concert hall space could be, interesting.
Could work as well.
Yeah.
Well, look, we'll see how we go with the extensions to the project anyway, and to that particular idea. So, thank you. Now, just wondering if anybody else had any other questions. We've got a little bit of time. We're filling these in, but
possibly.
That's it.
Yeah, I wonder with the physical nature of the work, and that there's these bodily sensations in there, if there is any tension, or if you see that there is something emotional that comes with that. Like, if not conceived as part of the artwork, is there an emotional reading of the work intended, or otherwise?
I think there could be, yeah. I mean, the way we recorded the voice is quite close and intimate, and she's singing quite a naturalistic, unaffected, under the breath hum. So that's it feels quite intimate and quite moving in that way, and that the fact that you feel it through your body, and that you become more in touch with what the sensations are as you move and you spend more time in the space. Yeah, I think there could definitely be an emotional aspect to it, but not one that I overly designed or calculated or anything. Yeah.
The one thing we did comment on, I think it was in Jane's talk, we noticed that three of the pieces, 3 of the 4 commissions used voice, and one of the other works did as well, and that one. So I think there is that connection immediately back to the presence of a person at some point as well with the singer in that way. And I think, particularly Jane Sheldon's piece was I think she really did consider the emotional impact of the space and the idea of women's voices falling into water in that way. But
Yeah, it was quite amazing doing the bump in, and just for a few hours all you could hear was this whole array of women's voices in different constellations for hours and hours. It was, amazing.
It was, Well, thank you very much. We might leave that there because we have to do the start up for the afternoon session. So could you join me in thanking Jasmin for her thoughts today? Thank you.
Thank you.
And just a reminder, we have one final talk tomorrow. That will be with myself and Ben Burney in conversation about the project. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.